There's a book just came out recently about World War II called Human Smoke. And if the writer had not been a respected novelist and writer beforehand, I don't think his book would have even been reviewed, because in his book he challenges the notion of the good war, and the reviewers sort of, rather contemptuously dismiss what he has to say. I'm suggesting, yes, the unsuggestible, that war itself, good wars or not, war itself needs to be reconsidered as a way of solving problems of the world. We're brought up in a war culture, in a military culture, in the notion of the romantic fighting for your country. Somewhere on the wall, as you go up the stairs in Widener Library, I haven't been in Widener for a little while, but I assume no pacifist has erased the slogan. But there on the wall of Widener Library shows a soldier, it goes back to World War I. I guess it was after World War I that this was put on the wall on the stairway of Widener. And the slogan next to the soldier is, "Happy is he who with one embrace clasps death and victory." Which leads me to Oliver Wendell Holmes. Don't ask me how it leads me to Oliver Wendell Holmes. When you're a speaker, nothing has to lead you to anything else. You can do whatever you like. So, I guess it led me to Oliver Wendell Holmes. I thought, okay, I am speaking at Harvard Law School, and here's the eminent Oliver Wendell Holmes, one of the gods of law schools everywhere. And Oliver Wendell Holmes was in the Civil War and the Good War. He never forgot it. And he made a speech at the Harvard graduating class some years after the war, and talked about the glories of war, really, the glories of fighting war. He said, "I do not know what is true. I do not know the meaning of the universe. But in the midst of doubt, in a collapse of creeds, there's one thing I do not doubt, that the faith is true and adorable, which leads a soldier to throw away his life in obedience to a blindly accepted duty, in a cause which he little understands, in a plan of campaign of which he has little notion, under tactics of which he does not see the use." No wonder that Theodore Roosevelt appointed him to the Supreme Court. This was right in line with Theodore Roosevelt's own glorification of the heroism and manliness of war. So, the point is that this is the culture in which we grow up, and against which I think we have to struggle, not just against this war, not just against that war, but against the idea of the heroism and nobility of war. There are a number of things, elements in this mindset that I'm speaking about, the mindset that we have to examine, which leads to war. A number of elements in this mindset which it's important for us to examine, think about, and to pass on to everybody we know. And because we're all, in a sense, we're all teachers, we all encounter people, we all talk to people, we are citizens, and our job is to have discussions with our fellow citizens, and not just to have a letter sent to our congressman, but to talk to the people around us. So there'll be 1,000 letters sent to congressmen and 10,000 people demonstrating in front of the Capitol and the White House. But one of the elements in this is sort of a loss of history. And I mean, Irene gave us some history, which is important. I mean, you can even go back as far as Irene's history, and people have already forgotten that, or they never saw it because the media never said anything about it. But generally, yes, there's a loss of history, because if not for a loss of history, people would not simply accept the idea that the United States is a benign country in the world, and that things we do in foreign policy are done for the good of people, and we fight wars for liberty and democracy, only against countries that have mass weapons of mass destruction, or that we claim are mass weapons of mass destruction. But you would have to know that the history of the American Empire, and isn't empire one of the words in the title of this gathering? Yeah. It used to be that you couldn't talk about an American empire, we can't do that, it's the British Empire. And the Belgian Empire, not the American, it used to be you couldn't talk about that, but now actually the idea is accepted, not just by left-wingers who criticize the empire, but by the members of the establishment and the intellectual supporters of the establishment who even revel in the idea of empire. It's good that the United States is in charge. Now Soviet Union is gone, we are number one. We can decide the fate of the world. Our empire will be, as somebody at Kennedy said, imperialism light. Well, nothing light about what we are doing in Iraq. There's nothing light in history of the development of the American Empire, from the extermination of the Indians to the Mexican War to the invasion of Cuba in 1898 to the war in the Philippines, to the interminable invasions and interventions of Marines in Central America, to the war after war after war, intervention after intervention, hundreds and hundreds of interventions. You know, when in 1961, I guess, after the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, and congressmen were disturbed, not because we invaded, or we tried to invade Cuba, but because we failed. That's always what disturbs them. Not that we did something that is immoral and unacceptable, that we failed in doing it. So they always have congressional hearings when we failed, and then they had Dean Rusk, the Secretary of State, up there and stand to explain this business of our participating in the Bay of Pigs invasion. And Dean Rusk said, in effect, what are you getting excited about? We've intervened 128 times in Latin America and other places before even 1898. So, it's there's a long history of American intervention and American war.